the history of Nosgoth. In the centuries before Kain's birth, the land was protected by an oligarchy of sorcerers, known as the Circle of Nine. These guardians were sworn to serve and protect the Pillars of Nosgoth, the ancient edifice towering over the earth as a manifestation of the mysterious power that preserved and gave life to the land. But the Circle was infiltrated by dark forces, and Raziel, the Balance Guardian, was cruelly murdered. Her assassination sent psychic shockwaves throughout the Circle, and in their derangement, the remaining sorcerers turned their powers to dark purposes, poisoning the land with their sorcery and abandoning the Pillars to stand like silent, decaying sentries. Destiny. Into this dying world, Kain was born, the son of an aristocratic Nosgoth family. He lived the privileged life of a nobleman, never realizing his undiscovered destiny. That he was marked from birth as Raziel's successor, fated to take her place as the guardian of balance. Ignorant of his destiny, the ambitious but directionless Kain roamed the land. During one fateful journey, he was ambushed by brigands and murdered, cruelly impaled on his assassin's sword. A dark covenant. Plucked from the brink of oblivion by the necromancer Mortanius, Kain awakened in the underworld. Still transfixed by his enemy's blade, tormented by his hunger for vengeance, and heedless of the spiritual cost, Kain recklessly accepted the necromancer's offer of revenge, and rose from his tomb to discover that he had been resurrected as a vampire. Kain quickly tracked down his assassins and exacted his bloody revenge. With his vengeance and hunger sated, he sought only a cure for the vampiric curse that afflicted him. Guided by Mortanius and the spectre Raziel, now bound helplessly to the decaying pillars she once served, Kain hunted down each of the corrupt sorcerers now poisoning Nosgoth. Only with their deaths could the pillars be healed, and only by restoring balance would Kain be released from his vampiric curse. At first reluctant to live the horror of an existence blighted by a thirst for human blood, Kain soon adapted and discovered within his darkened soul a growing disaffection for humankind as he embraced his newfound immortality. During his journey, Kain discovered and claimed the Soul Reaver, an ancient, soul-devouring blade, and stumbled across, not so coincidentally, a time-streaming device created by Mobius, the Guardian of Time. Against the counsel of the ancient vampire Vorador, Kain found himself embroiled in human events, caught in a bloody battle between Otmar's army of hope and the ruthlessly advancing armies of the Nemesis from the north. As the tide of battle turned, Kain used his only means of escape, the time-streaming device, which swept him nearly 50 years back into Nosgoth's past. Hoping to alter the course of Nosgoth's history, Kain assassinated the young King William the Just, who would become the diabolical tyrant known as the Nemesis. After sating himself on the victim's blood, Kain returned to the present, only to discover that his murder of the beloved king had ignited a genocidal war against vampires, led by the time streamer Mobius himself. Upon his return, Kain witnessed the future that he had wrought, and the final triumphant act of Mobius's cold-blooded mob. Vorador, the last of the era's vampires, is guillotined and his head held aloft for a cheering, bloodthirsty crowd, leaving Kain the sole surviving vampire in Nosgoth. As his quest brought him full circle, Kain confronted the destiny that Mortanius and Ariel had hidden from him. That he was the Balance Guardian, and that only by sacrificing himself could he restore the Pillars. Ariel presented him with a final, climactic decision. Sacrifice himself to heal the land, but ensure the extinction of the vampires. Or refuse the sacrifice and seal the world's corruption. Revolted by the machinations of the human sorcerers and alienated from his former humanity, Kain chose the latter path, opting to rule the world in its damnation rather than commit himself to oblivion. This apocalyptic act completed the Pillars' destruction. The mighty columns toppled as Kain sealed their ruinous fate, and damned Ariel to ceaselessly haunt the dilapidated Pillars she once served. Until the balance is restored, she can never be released. Kain concluded with the epiphany that Vorador was right, that vampirism is not a curse, but a blessing. That vampires are dark gods, whose duty it is to thin the human herd. With intentional irony, Kain established the ruined Pillars as the symbolic seat of his new empire, and the unrestored Balance Pillar as the base of his throne. In an act of calculated blasphemy, Kain raided the ancient tomb of the Sarafan, a fanatical order of warrior priests, once sworn to eradicate the vampires plaguing Nosgoth. From the desiccated corpses of these long-dead knights, Kain raised his 6 vampiric sons to become the lieutenants of his fledgling empire. But the Pillars, Kain ultimately realized, were more than just a human edifice. The health of the Pillars was tied inextricably into the health of the land. With the Pillars left unrestored, corruption seeped slowly into the land like a poison, turning his empire into an irredeemable wasteland.
That, ladies and gentlemen, was the events of Blood Omen, the first game in the Legacy of Kain series. But today, we are going to focus on its sequel. This is my favourite game of all time, on any system. I love it more than Valkyria Chronicles. I love it more than Sonic the Hedgehog or any Sonic the Hedgehog game. I love it more than any Master System game. This is Soul Reaver. I own the PC version, the first edition PS1 version, the incredibly rare rental version, yes, some twat put a sticker on mine and I can't get it off without wrecking the sleeve, and even a still sealed later release on the PS1 version. But today, to keep things dripping with that Sega flavour, we are going to check out the Dreamcast version. Now, I will show some comparisons between the two games, but not too much. I don't want to distract you from the game's story. Oh, and on a side note, I also have this damn cool printed walkthrough. Not that I'm going to need it. And a custom mirror. And this artwork by YK2K. Many of you probably know by now how important music is in a video game for me. And this game has a fantastic soundtrack. Strange thing is that when I downloaded the album years ago, it didn't have the main theme. After a bit of time on Google, I found out that it's because it was made by the band called The Information Society. When I bought that, I was shocked to find out there were lyrics for it. Well, sort of. Have a listen.
Off in the distance, I can see a huge holographic Ronald McDonald walking between the grain elevators and trees.
Ronald McDonald? What in the name of Satan's magic school bus is this guy talking about? Crazy shit aside, the music is still awesome. Now, I know you've already had a fucking Bible worth of backstory thrown at you, but the Legacy of Kain games are so detailed and expertly told as unique stories in gaming history that I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Sometime after Kain became the sole surviving vampire in Nosgoth, and with all his enemies slain, he decided to create an army. For that, he needed generals. The only problem is that making a vampire saps a lot of power from someone, so his sons would be weaker going down the line. The first vampire is also the playable character for Soul Reaver, Raziel. A powerful and noble being, he is also a dark-minded and bloodthirsty creature. His brothers have always resented him for being Kain's precious firstborn son. The second son is Terrell, self-righteous and vain, yet terrifying and gore-hungry. He wants nothing more than to make the world worship him. The third son is Duma, a powerful warrior and one obsessed with order and vampiric honor. Few would dare challenge him. The fourth son is Rahab. Of all the vampires, he would never overcome his weakness to the rays of Nosgoth's sun. While all vampires in the land would become immune as they age, Rahab and his spawn would forever fear the daylight. The fifth is Zephon, a sneaky and secretive creature with an appetite for carnage. He hates his fellow brothers, especially Raziel. The final and weakest son is Melchiah. While his soul is immortal, his body is not. As time passed, his flesh would rot and collapse from him. Right, that's enough of that. I grew up with the PlayStation version, now let's try out the Dreamcast version. So straight after the title screen, I noticed this version's first big change. Look at these faces. They ain't doing nothing, are they? Well, check out the PlayStation version. Pretty sweet, innit? Don't know why that little feature was skipped in the Dreamcast one. Anyhow, now for the opening FMV, which is so damn awesome that I just gotta show you the whole damn thing.
Kain is deified. The clans tell tales of him. Few know the truth. He was mortal once, as were we all. However, his contempt for humanity drove him to create me and my brethren. I am Raziel, firstborn of his lieutenants. I stood with Kain and my brethren at the dawn of the Empire. I have served him a millennium. Over time, we became less human and more divine. Kain would enter the state of change and emerge with a new gift. Some years after the Master, our evolution would follow, until I had the honor of surpassing my lord. For my transgression, I earned a new kind of reward. Agony. There was only one possible outcome. My eternal damnation. I, Raziel, was to suffer the fate of traitors and weaklings, to burn forever in the bowels of the Lake of the Dead. Cast him in. Tumbling, burning with white-hot fire, I plunged into the depths of the abyss. Unspeakable pain, relentless agony. Time ceased to exist. Only this torture and a deepening hatred of the hypocrisy that damned me to this hell. An eternity passed, and my torment receded, bringing me back from the precipice of madness. The descent had destroyed me, and yet I lived.
Raziel, you are worthy.
That was awesome! It looks even better than the PlayStation one, which, let's face it, technically, that's how it fucking should be. So in a nutshell, Raziel was executed for evolving beyond Kain and growing his own bat wings. Then he awakes in the underworld and is met by the voice of a mysterious creature.
You did not survive the abyss, Raziel. I have only spared you from total dissolution.
I would choose oblivion over this existence.
Now in the booklet, the voice is called the Elder God. And he tells Raziel that due to their immortality, vampires are a plague on the land and need to be wiped out. Raziel, now in shock from seeing his new corpse-like form, is persuaded by the Elder God to seek revenge against his brethren.
Use your hatred to reave their souls. I can make it possible. Become my Soul Reaver, my angel of death.
Let's quickly compare the graphics for the PS1 version, just to get it out of the way. So of course Raziel looks incredible on the Dreamcast, which of course it bloody well should, due to the tech of the console. On the trek out of here, Raziel becomes weak and nearly falls.
You are weak. You must feed.
The old hunger has left me. I have no desire for blood.
You are changed. Your bloodthirst is replaced by a deeper need. You have become a devourer of souls. To sustain your strength, you must hunt the lost spirits of the underworld and consume the souls of your enemies.
After pigging out on a spiritual buffet, we soon break free to the surface. Here we see one of this game's coolest features. You can shift from the spirit world to the real world with the aid of a conduit thingy. Whenever Raziel is destroyed in the material realm, he will be forced back into the spectral realm, where he can heal and return to life once more. There are some big differences between these worlds, beyond mere appearances though. For instance, water is as thin as air in the spirit world. It's a no swimming zone. Also, here shit is much more twisted. And time doesn't move right. So an eternity here is a second in the material world. Oh, also, water is like acid to vampires in the Legacy of Kain games. Ain't that a pisser? And Raziel still has many vampiric strengths and weaknesses, so water will melt your fucking face off. Hence why he got so messed up when he was thrown in the watery abyss. Now here is when we see this world's true horrors.
What are these creatures?
Do you not recognize them? They are the children of your brother, Duma.
That's impossible. These foul, scuttling beasts could not be kin of our high blood?
Do you suppose that time stood still for you, Raziel? Much has changed since you passed from the world of men.
So we've just found out that since Raziel's death, centuries have passed, and the noble human-looking vampires of Nosgoth have mutated into demonic monsters. This game has a really interesting system for killing enemies. If you fail to devour a vampire's soul, then it is not truly dead. And in some cases can be resurrected, or turned into something even more deadly. So, not wasting any time in his quest for revenge, Raziel goes straight to the Sanctuary of the Clans, which is basically the Vampire Palace. But, since Kain's decision to let the world rot, he has done exactly that. Nosgoth is nearly completely destroyed. I gotta say, I miss the fog in this game. In the PlayStation version, an enemy can appear from nowhere and add a bit of fear to the gaming experience. But in this version, you can see everything clear as day. Anyway, after failing to enter the sanctuary, Raziel has no choice but to journey deeper through the wasteland. And it isn't long before he comes across his own tomb, the Abyss. Now I know I've said he can't die, but what would happen if he died in the spectral realm? You know, like he ran out of all of his life. As in if we ran out of health in the health bar. Well, jumping into the Abyss has the same result, so just to show you what would happen, I'm gonna do it. There you go, back at the fucking start. But don't worry, because there's all these teleporter doobries you can use across the land. So when we get back to where we left off, Raziel decides he wants to see how his own people have been doing over the centuries. Seeing as he grew wings as a vampire, it's a fair bet that his people, his children, his family would have eventually had the exact same style of evolution. Unfortunately, we will never know. Raziel's kingdom is barren. His sons and daughters, the entire Razielim clan, was murdered soon after Raziel was. All that remains to honour them is the clan symbol. Speaking of that symbol, you may have noticed back at the sanctuary that there were other clan symbols there. One for each of Kain's sons. And of course Kain's own symbol at the centre, which is also my first ever tattoo. And I have Raziel's inverted logo, the one used throughout the entire series. And also, my son was named after Kain. True story. My boy's named after a vampire in a video game. Yep.